was first introduced to organizational behavior management, I was actually dropped into a school and asked to service a classroom with one student in the class. It was more than one student, but a particular student. It was a special ed classroom, special needs classroom. And I remember walking onto the campus of this school, and students were getting off the bus. Now, this school was in a high crime area. It was a high poverty school. They had decided that they were going to stop busing the year before because they were busing out to more affluent schools. And apparently they hadn't read any of the research on diversifying the socioeconomic makeup of schools as a means to improve student outcomes. But they were very well meaning with it. What they said was, we want to have community school. We want the administrators to look like us, and we're gonna, we don't want to put the kids on buses. And if your parents, you think, I don't want my kid to be on a bus all that time, it makes sense for them. So they had all brand new administrators, they had all brand new staff. They had hired a number of staff from central United States, and this is Florida, by the way. And they had a whole new student body. Well, I can tell you that when I showed up to that school, and I'm walking down, this is about October, I like to call it Rocktober, because in October this is where behavior challenges just seem to go nuts. There was not one staff member from the point where the kids were being dropped off to the cafeteria, and that's a good 100 yards. Right? Can you imagine? These are kindergarten kids, K through 5, right? Elementary kids. And there's no adults there. So if you can imagine the kind of behavior that would manifest itself. And it was there. Kids were running up and down. They were having the time of their life. They were pushing each other. They were getting way aroused. Walking to the cafeteria, there's food being thrown. They're going to the classroom, and it's nuts in there as well. So I went to my classroom, walking down the hallway and seeing the kids screaming. I'm looking at the teachers coming out every once in a while to try to settle down behaviors, but they didn't have any instructional control over the students, and they didn't have any stimulus control. The students acting like the adults weren't even there. Can you imagine that? And the teachers were very frustrated. They were very frustrated. Well, that year, the school ended up going, oh, by the way, the one class that was doing well was the special ed class. Why was it doing well? They were using direct instruction. Have you ever heard of direct instruction? If you haven't, go Google Project Follow-Through. Just hit the images and look at it. It was amazing. You heard Gina talk about earlier about opportunities to respond. They were giving lots of active student responding. The teacher would give some for instruction, and the student would respond. There was co-responding, and they were very engaged by it, which is the first line of behavior defense, right? Engaging students in instruction and coursework. It was awesome. That class was doing fine. But this school, at the end of the year, went from an A to an F. And do you guys get school grades over here? Yeah, they went from an A to an F in 1 year. They had 792 suspensions, right? Meaning the kids were being sent home. And that was incidents, not even days. You could probably multiply that by 2, 3, 4 times, right? Lots of suspensions. And they were getting upwards of 50 calls to remove students from the classroom a day. Now this is 600, 650 students every day. And they're, I don't want to be in here. Let me engage in this kind of behavior, and I'm going to get removed from the classroom. I get to go hang out with all my friends, and if I really screw up, I'm going to get sent home, which is the ultimate place where I want to go if I'm that frequent flyer. That makes sense to everybody? So at the end of the year, the deputy superintendent asked me if I'd be willing to come out and help to change the school around. And I think they asked me to come out because I was a crisis management trainer, and like, well, I think this guy can help things get safe, and he can restrain kids if something gets out of hand. And guys, I don't want to restrain kids, and that's not the point of crisis management. The point is to prevent those behaviors from occurring in the first place. So when they said, Paulie, can you help us turn the school around? I thought to myself, hell no. What am I going to do with this? It's a mess. All the staff had been trained in school-wide positive behavior supports. Have you guys ever heard of school-wide positive? That's a framework, right? They had been trained by USF. So I didn't really know, but while I've never deeply believed in myself, I have always believed in the science of human behavior. And while it doesn't give us all of the answers, it can help us to find the best ones. And so I said, okay, I accept that challenge, and they wanted me to help change behavior. And I went to a colleague of mine. I said, you know what, we have school-wide PBS, and I saw that teachers are trained in it, but I kind of think we need PBS for the teachers, right? Because if we're going to bring out the best in the students, don't we have to bring out the best in the adults in the environment? And they said, well, you know what, there is something like that. It's called organizational behavior management. And they handed me a book called Bringing Out the Best in People by Dr. Daniels, God bless him. He just died recently. And when I read that, I thought, this is great. It's everything I was taught in my coursework. It's the basic application of the science of human behavior. And I did some stuff with it. What I did was very small, like a component of what needed to change in the whole school. Like, how am I going to change 40 classrooms? What do you do there? Where do you start? But where I started was in the arrival time, that hallway, that breezeway where the kids were being dropped off. And I didn't do it because I read some research or I thought, this is what we need to do systematically. I did it because I didn't know what else to do, right? It was almost selfish. I'm like, well, maybe I can do something here. But what happened was almost miraculous. All I did was bring the staff into the library, and I said, guys, I know behavior was a challenge last year. For whoever was left, because only like 30 or 40% of the staff actually stayed. There was a huge turnover. I said, what if I could help you change that? Would you be willing to, right? Because it's making you stress, this, that, and the other. Are you tired of kids running in and being overly aroused? Is it hurting your instruction? Like, yes, we'd be willing to do this. Okay, fantastic. All I just need you to do is stand here, greet the kids, smile at them, say hello. If they're walking on the right side, say thanks for walking on the right side. If they run, have them stop, ask them what the expectation is, have them walk back again, right? And then when they walk by again, say thanks for walking, have a great day. By the way, that's punishment if it stops them, right? People don't like the word punishment. Punishment is just a stimulus that decreases the future occurrence of behavior. Nothing wrong with it. The problem with punishment is the misuse and overuse of punishment in the absence of an environment that's not rich with positive reinforcement for value-added behavior. Do you guys agree with that? The punishment's got a really bad rap, but in science, not that. But I understand. We don't want coercion. We don't want coercive environments. Nobody wants that kind of thing. So I said, great, let's do this stuff. I got them to go out in the breezeway. We all practiced it. And then day one came. And I walked up and down that breezeway, thanking everybody for being there. If they were doing the right thing, I positively reinforced them. Thanks for doing that thing. I saw you positively reinforcing the kid with behavior-specific praise. Awesome. If they weren't doing the right thing, I said, hey, I just saw that kid run by. Do you remember what we agreed we were going to do out here? I said, oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Great. Let's try it again. Somebody did it. They did it. The right thing. They had to stop, walk back. I thanked them for doing it. And then right after that, I sent them the data. I said, because you were... So I was aligning their behavior with a meaningful outcome. Well, what do you think happened after that? And the answer is a couple things. One, if somebody thought ABA was like bad, they no longer thought ABA was bad because like this stuff is cool. It makes my job easier. And that's a powerful reinforcer for people. If I was paired with ABA and they thought, well, this is a behavior analyst and I've had some bad experience with behavior analysts, they thought, this dude's cool. He made my job easier. Things happen that's positive for me, you know? And they said, you know what, hey, we did this in the arrival time. Can we do it in the cafeteria? Can we do it as a dismissal? And I said, sure, we can. So we made these big global changes that I ended up writing a book about it called Quick Wins. And it's like behavioral momentum. And it's getting people to engage in something that we call low response effort. Sometimes easy to do, but produces a visible and valued outcome for them. Because again, you can't make it about the students without making it about the adults, right? We have to change the environment in order to get the best out of students. The adults in the environment are the most important variables in the environment, right? They are part of the student's environment. We got to get behavior change in them. So fast forward to the end of that year, we went from 50 codes a day. Remember, a code is students being removed from the classroom to 3 a week. 3 a week. That's miraculous. From 792 suspensions to 67. Amazing. I wish I could say that we went from an F to an A. We went from an F to a high D. All that learning we got lost last year, it's going to take a lot to recoup that, you know. So that sent me on a mission, and we started a school turnaround team. We started doing it in multiple schools. But again, the principles that I'm going to talk about here are generalizable because I've done it in different places in business. I've even done it with fighters. I have local, state, national, and world champion fighters, all built on the practical application of applied behavior analysis. The practical application, I think, I would argue, I feel certain about it, but of course I'm biased, that behavior analysis is the greatest science in the world. Case in point, what science can improve other sciences by improving the performance of the respective scientist? It is great. There is nothing wrong. Now, there's been some shade thrown on it, and understandably, because people have mispracticed it. But it's not the science, it's the people practicing it. We don't throw out the whole medical field because there's malpractice in it, right? Right? We look at that person, and if we're seeing it at large, at scale, we have to think about how are we preparing our scientists. Now, my personal belief is that we are not preparing them well enough. I am a professional fighter and a professional fight coach. I don't give my fighters theory and a little bit of modeling and some practice and drop them into the cage of the ring and expect that they're going to perform. And then they're not performing well, I'm judging them, I'm evaluating. No, I have to systematically develop the skill, grow it up to be an adult, get it out to go perform in the real world. And my lab has been thousands of hours in that gym, the boxing gym, the MMA gym, and thousands of hours in schools. And to be honest with you, screwing a lot of stuff up at first. Because I was originally trained to pass a test, and I passed the test, great, but that does not mean I'm ready to apply the science effectively. But the good thing is that I really did believe in the science. And when I was having some success with my fighters, I just took that science and put the lens on what I was doing. What am I doing from a scientific point of view? Oh, that's why this is happening. Oh, that's why this isn't happening. And so I began to look at my own behavior through this lens and start to change that and start to generalize it to other areas. So my mission, my core value is empowering people, right? My mission is to empower people to better help themselves and others by disseminating the science of human behavior. I'm doing that right now. I love it. I feel like I was put on this earth to disseminate the science. Now, there's levels of the science. Gina would tap dance on my head, right? In terms of her level of conceptual understanding, with research, right? We owe a huge debt of gratitude to the researchers in the field because they inform everybody else. Without researchers, there is no us. There is no field, right? Now, if we look at them as deep sea divers and then this research vessel, most people practicing are like scuba divers and they're floating information up to them. Now I am like the paddleboarder on top. I jump in every once in a while and I snorkel, you know what I mean? But I want to say, hey, check up all the stuff and I want to share it with all the world because I believe the science should be everywhere. I don't believe that we should have people saying, well, there's anti-ABA. If they knew better, they would do better, but they don't know better because we as a science haven't really used the science to market ourselves, to make it valuable to people, to see how people can use it in their everyday life and everything that they do. They can be better parents. They can be better managers. If you like to crochet, they can be better at that or help other people be better at it. It's amazing what we can do with the science. So that's part of my mission. I believe that if we unlock behavior, we unleash people's potential. And that includes our own behavior. I believe that there's a lot of well-intended people out there, in the field, out of the field, but in the end, intention might be a value of ours, but it's about impact, right? Wouldn't you agree? An impact is a measure. You know, it's not just about what we're doing, what's happening as a result of what we're doing. I don't care. I gotta watch my language, I feel like, and I'm gonna talk about this in a second. My mouth is like a box of chocolates, like you never know what you're gonna get. But I feel like I have all these dignitaries out there, and I'm gonna watch my mouth, but it's another indicator that our behavior's on the influence of the environment, right? So I'm gonna watch it, man, because I don't wanna be judged by these folk. But something might slip out. But I don't care about somebody's power. I don't care about the books they've written. I don't care about the degrees that they have. What I do care, I respect that, right? But here's how I'm going to judge somebody. What I care about is not how much power somebody has, but by how they treat the person with least amount of power. That's what's going to make me judge you. Maybe you don't care if I judge you or not, but that's what's important to me. Okay? I believe in KISS. Keep it simple, scientists. Parsimony. Everything I talk about is going to be very, very simple. And I believe in emotions. I came from social work, bachelor's in social work, master's in social work, and I know that we say, well, we're behaviorists, we don't talk about emotions. Yes, we do. It's radical behaviorism. We'll talk about that in just a second, right? Because I believe emotions inform. They let us know that something has changed in the environment, right? It's an antecedent to me doing something else, right? To evoke this private event in me, this covert behavior. And if I'm aware of that, and aware that when I feel this way, I engage in this behavior, I can start to become aware of what is triggering that. What am I doing? Am I engaging in the right behaviors that align with my values? I'm going to be talking a little bit about that. Now, this is the only bit of data that I'm going to share, and I just made it up. I believe that we can solve 80% of the world's problems if we're doing 20% of the science. And the reason I believe it is because, as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm not deep in the conceptual underpinnings of it. I've made these changes with the practical application of the science. My goal is to help people be better observers of their behavior, better observers of the impact of their behavior on the environment, and better observers of the impact of the environment on their behavior. Okay? So recently my good friend David Roth from the Skinner Foundation shared with me, like, you know what, Skinner has a great quote on this, and I think David might actually be the foremost authority on everything Skinner, because he went right to the book and he pulled it out. Skinner said, a question commonly asked is this: when shall we have the behavioral science we need to solve our problems? I believe the real question is this: when shall we be able to use the behavioral science we already have? More and better science would be helpful, but far more effective decisions would be made in every field of human affairs if those who made them were aware of what we already know, the basic principles of behavior. And I can tell you that even those of us in the field of behavior analysis do not always follow those principles. We suffer from what I call behavioral myopia, right? We use the principles of human behavior when we're working to learn. But as soon as we zoom out and we start looking at the adults around it, we forget about that stuff. How do we know? We start blaming people. We get mentalistic right away. They're doing it because of this, they're lazy, you know what? Well, the science tells us that behavior occurs because of the environment, right? What's going on here? I'm going to put some performance diagnostic lens on and figure out, is it a skill deficit? Right? Is there some sort of performance deficit? Why? And what might I do more or less or differently to make that change? So, I'm not going to read each one of these to you. These are my objectives, though. I'm going to talk about moving from being molecular to zooming out. I want to talk a little bit about what I'm calling adaptive intelligence, but what we're going to find is that adaptive intelligence is just understanding basic behavioral principles. We'll talk a little bit about emotions and private events, and I'm going to give you guys some practical OBM strategies, systematic approaches for making change in schools. But remember, wherever you work, these principles are all the same, just the topography is different. Now, here's some of the things that I see, and I alluded to this at the beginning, that people, and well-meaning people, do harmful things. I don't mean terrible things. I was one of these people. I was out there thinking I was doing a good job, helping students, because I wrote a behavior plan that's the size of a book, that nobody's going to read, but the graphs looked amazing, but nobody was following them. So I took all that time and didn't help the kid. Nobody was being helped. And I went right to the FBA, BIP, because people said that's what you need to do, instead of looking at the easiest thing that we could tweak in the environment that's going to make the biggest difference for that student and the rest of the students. So sometimes even behavior analysts like myself do these things. From malice, sometimes they do things because they get upset. We are human, we all have our own histories, right? Certain things make us upset. And we step out of what we know to be true with behavioral principles and do things that provide us some sort of immediate relief, right? We engage in some sort of escape motivated behavior.